There was a king who was um, extremely overambitious. He was so overambitious that he had no focus on the direction of life and he had no focus on the purpose of life. There was a wise man in his kingdom who wanted to educate the king, who wanted to help him understand that along with being ambitious, one also should look for direction in life. One also should look for meaning and purpose in life. Seeing the king is just not ready to accept and understand the deeper aspects of life, he decided to teach the king through an experiential learning. He walked up to the king one day and he told him that I would like to tell you that there is a good news and a bad news for you. Which do you want to hear first? The king said, tell me the bad news first. The wise man said, the bad news is that you're going to die in 7 days. The king was disappointed. He said, after you give me such a bad news, what else is there to hear good news? The man said, there is a good news. Though you're going to die in 7 days, the good news is that you're going to go to the heavens. So the king became happy. The wise man said, there's again a good news and a bad news. The bad news is that though you're going to go to the heaven, there is population explosion in heaven. The king became sad. The wise man said, don't worry, there is a good news. The good news is that though there is population explosion in heaven, you will have a palace of your own. So the king became happy. The wise man said, again there is a good news and a bad news. The bad news is that though you'll have a palace of your own, there are big mosquitoes in that palace. The king became sad. And the wise man said, don't worry, there's a good news there. The good news is that though there are mosquitoes, there are mosquito nets also. So the king became happy. And the wise man said, again there is a good news and bad news. The bad news is that though there are mosquito nets, the mosquito nets have big holes in them. The king became sad. And the wise man said, don't worry, there's a good news. The good news is that though the mosquito nets have holes in them, you can stitch them up. So the king became happy. The wise man said, again there is a good news and bad news. The bad news is that though the mosquito nets have holes and you can stitch them up, there are no needles in the heavens. So the king became sad. The wise man said, don't worry, there is still a good news. The good news is that though there are no needles in the heavens, when you die, take one needle with you. And the wise man was walking away. The king initially became happy. After a moment, he began to think. And he said, wait a minute. When I die, how can I take even one needle with me? You can take nothing with you when you die. And the wise man said, that's exactly what I've been trying to tell you. When you die, you can take nothing with you, not even a needle. Why are you endeavoring so much, accumulating so much, when finally you can't take even a needle with you? Of course, this doesn't mean that we don't endeavor at all. What it really means is that along with ambition, we also should need to focus a little bit on direction. At the end of life, Alexander the Great, he had a desire. This was his last death wish. His desire was, when his funeral procession was being taken, his body would be taken, his desire was that his hands be spread out like this with his palms open. His second desire was that ahead of his procession, all the wealth that he accumulated all his life should be thrown on the street. So people were completely bewildered. His ministers were bewildered about this strange request. They asked Alexander, why do you want to do this? This man said, I want the world to know that though I had so much wealth, all that wealth cannot help me bring back to life. And I want the world to know, though I had accumulated so much, I'm going back empty-handed. Life is very fast. Unfortunately, we are running at the pace of life, and while trying to keep up with the pace of life, we forget that we also need to look for direction in life. Let us not spend time only running at the speed of the clock, but let us also use some time looking at the compass to find out which direction to run. Speed without direction is meaningless. Let us spend some time every day looking for direction and purpose in life.